Hi everybody, this is Stephen Garrett with the TESS team. Welcome to the Intro to TESS training session. We're going to be covering a lot of the basics tonight, just the explanation of how to use the system, some of the terminology. We'll go ahead and activate a brand new account so you can see what it looks like starting from the very beginning. We'll look at creating clients, creating trips, and a few other basic things. So let's jump right in here. You should see on your screen an activation email. We're going to start with from the very beginning with an activation email. You probably have already activated your account, but okay, a little bit of information about the system, end user license agreement. We all read those, right? Pick a password, kind of normal password requirements. I'll show you how to change your password a little bit later. On this screen, you can choose between the standard or the advanced package. It's $10 a month for the standard package and $25 for the advanced package. I'm going to leave it on the standard package for right now, but I'll show you where to change that later tonight. Almost everything that we look at in this session will be part of the standard package. There's just a couple of things that I'll show that are part of the advanced package. I'll mention which those are when we get there, but we'll really be focusing on standard features tonight. If you know that you'll be continuing after your trial, you can go ahead and enter a credit card now. If not, you can wait and enter that later, or if you know that your agency is going to be paying for your account, then you can just skip over this part. Just confirm your information there and click activate, and you're all set. Usually you just go to your trip dashboard or into your profile from here, but I'm going to log out so that we can talk about this login page for just a minute. You'll see that there's three things that you need to know to log into the system. You need to know your username. The demo agent that we just activated, its name is Frank. You need to know your password, and you need to know your company short name. Your company short name is the name that you or your company owner created for your company when you first were set up in the system. It could be an abbreviation, it could be a short version of your company's name. For example, my demo agency is called Cool Destinations, so I just have that abbreviated to Cool. So you click sign in, and if you put something in wrong, you'll get this screen, and it looks like the password was wrong, and it may be your password that was wrong, but it could also be your username or your company's short name. Often we'll see people using email addresses instead of usernames. Your username could be an email address, but usually it's not. It's usually a first name or first initial last name, something like that. And then it's easy to forget what your company short name is, especially if it's a longer one or if it's an unusual acronym or something. So if you get stuck here, you can click on the forgot your password link and type in your username and company short code here. But if one of those was the pieces of information that was wrong, you're still not going to get the email to reset your account. So if you get this far, you're still not getting logged in, then if you are part of an agency that has an administrator, the administrator can get your password reset for you, or otherwise, whether you have an admin or not, you can always come to the support team and we can help you get logged in. So you can just email support@travelesolutions.com and we will help get you back into the system. All right, we'll get Frank logged in here. Let's talk about some of the terminology and where to find things in the system. We're looking at our dashboard here, and it's pretty empty because we're a brand new agent. But as we work through some things tonight, we'll see some trips come in, we'll see some tasks start coming in due. We'll see some sales, month-to-date and year-to-date sales increase, and we'll also be able to see that here on our chart so you can compare year over year. We won't see commissions tonight, but just like your sales, over time you'd see your commissions come in as well, and you can see how your commissions would compare month to month in this area down at the bottom. On the left, this darker area, this is what we call the main menu. Each of these sections is a menu, so you can click into these to get to different parts of the system. We'll be looking primarily at client management and trip management tonight, And then of course, always remember there's a documentation link here. Or even if you're not logged into the system, you can always get to the documentation by going to docs.trytess.com. Going up next to your picture, you can get to your profile by clicking on the eye symbol. You can add a task by clicking on these. We'll talk more about both of those a little bit later. In the upper left corner are these three lines. This is called a hamburger menu. And if you click on that, that will hide or show that main menu. And that is important because TESS is what's called a mobile responsive design, which means that as your screen size changes, TESS automatically reformats itself. We don't need that email anymore. So you can see it as it got a little bit smaller, that menu hit itself automatically. And I have my text size blown up kind of big so that it's easier to see through the GoToWebinar session. So on your screen, it would probably look a little bit smaller, but you can see that as I reformat my window, things will automatically start to reformat themselves. We go a little bit smaller, maybe iPad size. You can see that things on the right wrapped around underneath, and we can go down all the way to phone size and things reformatted to work well on this size as well. So you just scroll up and down. You don't have to zoom in and out or left and right, anything like that. But that's just important to remember. As you get smaller, if you're missing your menu, just click on those buttons to get it back. Going across the top, we have a quick links menu where you can add a client or a trip. Notification icon, that tells you when you have a message in your inbox. It's mostly just used for letting you know about payments. If you're part of an agency that's paying through TESS, it lets you know that you've received a payment. Your name is a menu. If you're an administrator, you'll have a link here for your company. If you're an agent, you'll have a link for your own profile and to log out. So our profile is where we're going to go next. So you can click here, you can click the eye symbol next to your picture. Along the top of this page, you can see as I'm moving my mouse, you get a little blue glow underneath some of these words. These are called tabs. So when you hear me talking about tabs on a screen, this is what I'm referring to. You'll see this on almost all of the screens in the system that we use tabs to navigate through different parts of that interface. We can go ahead and add a image to our profile, add a picture of ourselves. Frank gets to look like me, lucky Frank. Just some statistics about our progress. We don't have any yet. You can change your password here, update some of your contact information here. You can see your commission rate if you are a commissioned agent. Go over to the My Account tab, and here we can see the subscription level that we're on. So I'm on the standard plan right now. To upgrade to the advanced plan, you just click the upgrade button. It's easy as that. If you are on the advanced plan and decide you don't need the advanced features, it's also really easy to downgrade. You don't have to call us and listen to us tell you why you should be on the advanced plan. You just click the button, and that's all there is to it. We're going to stay on advanced tonight, though, and like I said, I'll let you know when we touch on topics that are part of the advanced package. On the right here is where you'll add your credit card. If your agency is paying for your account, you would see that here. You'd see somebody else's name listed as the person paying for your package. If you're paying for it yourself, just add your credit card. You'll get an email when your trial's coming up, so you don't need to worry about that. It's a little bit later. Going on to the settings tab, a couple of important things to do here. First one is authorizing an email address and phone number. And all you're really doing here is telling the system which email address and phone number you want your clients to see when you send communications to them. So I'll choose that for my email address. I don't have a phone number in the system yet, so I'll just click on Add Phone Number. Add a phone number there. And that's it. Nothing special happening there. The next is the social providers. These are the links that will show up on the social media icons on email templates or on client portals. We won't get into client portals tonight, but anywhere where Facebook icon, for example, shows up, this is the link that will be behind that. So you don't want to put in something like I think that's my Facebook profile, and something similar for Twitter. You only want to fill out the ones that you would actually want your agents to go to. Any that you leave blank just won't show up. So if you don't ever post to LinkedIn, then don't put a link in there for LinkedIn. I'll show you a little bit later where you can see those icons pop up. Okay, a few things that we won't get into deeply. You'll see other tabs like the timeline tab and the help desk tab. I'll touch on the help desk later, but if I skip over something, don't need to worry about it too much for tonight. We cover some of these things in some of the more advanced features, sessions, sorry. Okay. So from our profile, we're going to jump into clients. Clients are really the heart of your business. They're the heart of our system. Everything revolves around managing your clients. Well, TESS does a lot of different things. At our core, we started as a CRM, a client relationship management system. So clients are really important to us. So here in the main menu, I clicked on client management and I clicked on clients. And here we would see a list of our clients if we had any. We don't yet, but we'll come back and see that in a minute. And on most of your screens, on most of the screens in the system, you'll see some sort of add button. It varies from screen to screen depending on what kind of things you can add, but in this case, you have a button to add a client. So we'll click that and go ahead and get started. The only required fields are first name and last name. I am going to put a few other things in here because I want to show how they work when we get to that part of the system. Okay, so that's the basics of our client profile. Then we can start adding additional contact details. So that could be an email address. You can have multiple email addresses for a client, so you can choose which one you want to be the default. You can also store phone numbers. You can track rewards programs. You might want to put their American Airlines number on here. A lot of different things you can cover there. In the bottom left here is our passport details, as well as the TSA pre-check number. Going on to the tracking tab, a couple important things here. The first is relationships. If you've worked in other travel-based CRMs, this is the first place where TESS is going to feel a little bit different. In a lot of those systems, what we call relationships, you might think of as relatives, are just information associated with a client. But in TESS, everybody is a client. So we'll go ahead and add a husband for Tammy. We'll call him Tom. Anywhere you have a client or traveler field in TESS, you can just start typing in a name and we'll search the system to see if they're already available for you, if you've already entered them basically. And if you haven't, then you'll get this option to just create a new one from here. If they live at the same address, you can just check that box and click create. So now Tom's not just associated with Tammy, he is associated with Tammy, but he's also a client on his own. So if we click on Tom, we'll be taken to his profile and we can track information about him. We can go to his tracking tab and we see that Tammy is automatically linked as his wife. If we click on Tammy, we'll go back to her profile. So now we could book travel for Tom on his own, for Tammy on her own, or for both of them together. They're both clients now. Go ahead and add a son for them as well. Give him a birthday while we're in here. Okay, so that's relationships. The other important thing is credit cards. So TESS allows you to store credit card information for your clients. You can store it securely. Go ahead and add one here for Tammy. A couple important things to know about what we're doing with credit cards. We are not processing these credit cards. We're not charging credit cards. We'll talk about it a little bit more when we get into bookings, but we're not making payments on behalf of your clients. We're not ever trying to charge this card in any way. It is just a secure place to store the information. If you have a different secure place to store their credit card information, that's great. There's no reason that you have to put it into TESS. It's just available for you as a feature. So as soon as you save that, It gets encrypted when you need to see it. It decrypts it for you. It's always stored encrypted in the database, and it's always transmitted through HTTPS, an encrypted transportation protocol. You can store as many credit cards as you want to for a client and track which one is the default card. So you might have one that they prefer to use for flights, for miles, and one that they want to use for hotels for cashback or something like that. After we get some trips added for Tammy, you'd be able to see them listed under Trips tab. Any communications that you send through the system, you can see in the Communication tab. Any notes that you take about this client. Most of the time, notes that you take are related to a trip and you'd want to store those attached to the trip. I'll show you how to do that later. But if you have notes that you want to keep about your client that aren't specific to one trip, so maybe Tammy always flies first class, or Tim has a peanut allergy, or anything that you want to kind of keep track of, or just knowing your clients, if you know that you're not going to talk to them for a year, you might put a note in that says, remember to ask how their house remodel went, things like that. And the timeline just keeps track of history. We'll look at the trip timeline a little bit later to see how that works. That's the basics of clients. If we go back out to our client list now, we can see that we have 3 clients. We can search by a lot of different fields. This button in the upper right next to the Add Client button, this one's really important. This is our Import-Export button, and you'll see this on a lot of screens. And depending on the screen, it might be just an import, it might be just an export, or in many cases like this one, it will be both. So here you can import a spreadsheet of all of your clients. You can use, if you use our template, it usually works a little bit better. If you're having trouble uploading a client list, you can just send it over to support@travelesolutions.com and we can help you get that imported. Exporting is just the same. So just click on export. It will download to Excel so that you can use that in other systems. Makes it really easy to get your data in and out of the system. If you are not an Excel user, Excel files will almost always open in Numbers on Macintosh, or you can import those into Google Sheets or use OpenOffice. The difference between a client and a client lead is that a client lead is really just for marketing. For some reason, you have the right to market to them. Maybe you went to a show, like a wedding show, and you got a list of attendees and you can market to those people. You'd keep track of those as client leads and eventually convert them into clients, hopefully when they respond to one of your emails. A client is somebody that you have some kind of business relationship with. It may just be that they asked you for a quote and never booked with anything, but they're still a client. All right, let's move on to trips next. So just like our client list, we would see our trip list here, don't have any yet. So we'll create one. Now this add button, unlike the other one, gives us a few different options. We're going to focus on regular trips tonight. I'll talk a little bit about group trips, and then we won't really get into proposals tonight, but proposals work a lot like the itinerary that we'll be working with in our regular trip. So let's go ahead and create a trip and start creating this. It's going to be a vacation. Enter a start and end date. Trip description is pretty important. You want this to be descriptive, obviously, of what it is that you're booking. Your client won't see this description. It's for you, or if you're part of an agency where an agency owner is going to be paying you, it's also for them. So you want to put something like client name, where they're going, and maybe roughly when they're going. There's an example here of something that you can use. And your agency may have more specific requirements. It can be really useful in situations where maybe the booking numbers don't match up for some reason, and you need to figure out which booking this check is for so that you can get paid for that. Having a good descriptive trip description can help in those situations. Now, let's go ahead and add our travelers. We have primary and secondary travelers. You can have multiple of both. So here we'll add Tammy and Tom, both as primary. And we'll add Tim as the secondary traveler. And just like on our client form, where when we were trying to link clients together, if they don't exist, we can add a new one from here, just like we were adding a new one from there. But if I spell Tim correctly, they will come up. Okay, a lot of icons and things going on this list of travelers here. Next to Tammy's name, we see a birthday cake. That means that she has a birthday happening during the trip. So her birthday is February 25th, and our trip is from the 23rd to the 1st. So during that trip, she'll have a birthday. Well, champagne glass means that she also is having an anniversary during the trip. See her birthday here, her age, some information about her. Scheduling email automation, we won't get into tonight. That one is another advanced feature. We covered that in our trip extensions class. Tom has a warning here. This just means that if you do schedule email automation, he's not going to get it because he doesn't have an email address. Same with Tim. And Tim here also has a birthday cake, and he's going to turn 3 during this trip. And that may or may not be an important age, with kids. With birthday cakes in general, just let you know you might want to do something for your client. With kids, it's a good idea to just double check. They might be an age where they're going from qualifying for infant in arms to not qualifying, or different things like that that can change around children at different ages. And our itinerary is what we'll work on next. So let's add a flight to this. When you're adding a flight, it's important that you have the right departure date. Then you just put in the airline code and the flight number all together without a space. We have integration with live flight data, so it took just a second for that to pop up because we're actually going out to a provider, looking that flight up, and bringing back the real flight data. So you can click on that, you can go in and see the details. Of course, it's a ways out, so of course it's on time, but as it gets closer, you'd be able to see stats about that flight get updated. So let me save that so that I can come out to our suppliers list real quick and look at our airlines. If you need to look up an airline, you can come here to do that. You can also just Google it. These are standard codes. They're all over the internet, but we have a list here. Most of them are pretty obvious. UA for United, AA for American, but some of them are weird, like JetBlue is B6. So, if you try what you expect it to be and it doesn't come up, then you can come out here and look up the flight code there, or airline code. Okay, we're going to put our clients in a Disney resort here. We'll send them to Animal Kingdom. Make sure that your times line up so that your itinerary comes out right. They're coming in at 6:06. Their flight lands at 6:06, so we might put them checking in at 8 o'clock. Then checking out maybe 10 a.m. Here you can see things aren't formatted quite right. That's where I was talking about, or because I have my text size blown up really big, some things aren't lining up quite right. Yeah, let's go ahead and add our return flight as well. Our return flight is at 7:46, so probably want them to check out a little earlier than 10 o'clock. Then you can add in other things. Under our trip activities here on the left, anything that you use often, you can set up ahead of time as a trip activity. Anything that you're just using as a one-off, you can add directly to the trip. So I might have a transfer, I might have somebody picking them up at the airport on the 23rd. It's Bob's transfer service. I'm never going to use Bob's transfer service again, just the one off there, so I can just type it in. Meet at taxi station. And that will be there. If Bob's transfer was something that I was going to use all the time, then I could add it as a trip activity so that when I searched for it, it would come up there. So for example, I have some restaurants in here with descriptions already set up, so I don't have to retype that every time. So maybe I have them going out for their anniversary, which was on February 25th. And last thing, we'll add their Disney tickets on here. Again, this is another one that I set up ahead of time because it's one that I use frequently. Okay, we have a pretty good basic itinerary built out here. Just kind of scan through it, make sure everything is in the order. If something's out of order, like our transfer is at the top instead of being underneath our flight, that's because I had the time wrong here. Lands at 6, so I have their transfer at 6:30 p.m. Okay, from there we're going to go on to bookings. And this is another area where TESS might be a little bit different than some other systems that you've used. In a lot of systems, a trip and a booking are the same thing. In TESS, you can have multiple bookings for a trip. So for example, let's go to our bookings tab and just go ahead and create a booking. The booking number is the number that you got back from the supplier, whoever your supplier is. I just use a date and time stamp here so I don't end up with duplicates for a supplier, but you would use the actual number that you received from them. The booking date is the date that you booked it. It doesn't have anything to do with when they're traveling. It's when you created that with the supplier. And here we'll say that American is our supplier for this one. Now, it's not necessarily the carrier. I might have booked it through FunJet or somebody. Here I'm going to put in, ideally you're putting in the name of the company that will be sending the commission check to you, or the name of the company that will be showing up on your client's credit card is another good way to think about it. I'm just making up amounts here, so don't quote me on any of these prices. If you booked something for them that you're not getting paid for, that's definitely happens sometimes. You can put in 0 as a projected commission. That's okay. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you too much though. So we'll give ourselves a little commission there. Here you can see a commission expected amount. Because Frank is part of an agency and Frank makes a 75% commission, he's getting, pretty easy calculation in this case, he's getting 75% of the 100. So you're putting in as the commission, you're putting in the total amount that American is going to be sending to the agency. And then if you are part of if you're a independent contractor who receives a portion of that, you'll see that breakdown here. So always put in the total amount that the company is sending there. You can put in the final payment date here. So I'll put in an early date for that one since it's for airline tickets, and then save that. Booking description is optional. It's really handy if you are entering multiple bookings for the same supplier, the same tour operator. So example, if you're using Disney Parks and Resorts for the hotel and for tickets and for dinner reservations, then you'd have 3 of those and you'd want to be able to indicate which is which. So booking description is helpful there. Okay, so we added a booking, but that was just the flights. Let's add another booking. For the resort, for the hotel. So that one was Disney. And final payment for that's going to be 30 days ahead. So we'll say the 23rd. So now we have 2 bookings in the system. So we have 1 trip with, what do we put, like 6 items in our itinerary and 2 different bookings in the system. So you can really, it makes it very flexible. You can have a trip that has any number of itinerary items and any number of bookings. You might only ever have 1 booking as part of a trip because you book everything through a wholesaler or an aggregator. Okay, going on to our communication tab here. First thing we're going to do is look at our invoice. So we'll look at the detailed invoice. And over here on the right, you can see the standard TESS invoice. This logo is just the silly logo I uploaded for my demo agency. I have my agent contact information here, my client information, some of the trip information. Then they can see each of the bookings with what the package price is and what their final payment dates are. So let's go back into a booking and make a payment on this. So we'll go into the Disney booking, go to the Payments tab. So I opened the booking, and then that opened up a couple of additional tabs, and we went to the Payments tab on that booking. We're going to add a payment. So this is a deposit. Made the payment today. Because we're storing the credit card in TESS, you can click here to see that credit card information. This description is whatever you want it to be. We'll default it to the Visa ending in whatever based on what you chose for them. If you're not storing your credit cards in here, or if you want to put a different description here, that's okay. So you might have, maybe a grandparent is paying for it. You could just put in grandparents Visa or something like that. So now we've made a payment. Let's come back over to our communication tab. And again, really important to remember, we're tracking the payments here. You still need to go into your supplier system and create those bookings, go into your supplier system and make the payments on those bookings. So back in our invoice, now you can see the same information, but you can see the payment listed here. So let's send this out to our client. Just click the button to email an invoice. And you'll see the history show up here. It'll show scheduled, but they go out pretty quickly. So you can see that one's already been sent. You can also export them to PDF. So if you prefer to attach a PDF to an email or even mail it to them, or maybe it's somebody you meet with in person locally, you can export that to PDF. So they're really easy to work with. Okay, I talked about the invoice, of course. The invoice is part of the standard package. The other email types are all part of the advanced package. So I won't focus on those too much, but I do want to look at our itinerary real quick. So this is the itinerary we built out earlier. You can see we got a little at a glance section with the basic information. We have our itinerary here with our flights, our transfer, our property, our dinner reservations, our flights. So just like our invoice, click here to email it to them, or click here to export that to PDF if you want to print it out or send it to them as an attachment. Documents can be any file that you want to keep track of related to the trip. So I know some agencies, depending on where they're going, like to have a copy of the passport. So you might have your client send you a copy of their passport. You might get a copy of an itinerary from the supplier that you want to keep track of. So you just drag them, drop them in here, make sure you upload them before you leave the page. If you have a portal, the portals are an advanced feature, but if you have a client portal with your client, you can also share documents with them through their portal, and they can share documents with you through their portal as well. But on the standard plan, you can still store documents for yourself for tracking those here. On the Notes tab, anything related to the trip. Again, kind of like the credit cards, if you have a way to keep track of notes for yourself that you're happy with, that's fine. You don't have to put notes in TESS. This just gives you a secure place to store it without worrying about losing your notebook or figuring out how many notebooks you need to take with you when you go on vacation, especially if you're part of an agency where a partner or an owner sometimes backs you up. In those situations, having notes in here can be really helpful. So for example, Tammy called, changed mine from Polynesian to Animal Kingdom. So when they show up at the Polynesian and don't have a reservation, you can come in here and see why they don't have a reservation. On the Tasks tab here, tasks are just what you'd expect them to be. It might be, maybe you like to check on the flights the day that they're leaving. Make sure everything is on track. So you have two things going on here. You have your due date, Then you have when you're going to be reminded about that. And maybe you don't want a reminder at all. Maybe you want to be reminded on the due date or a day ahead of time. You can have as many tasks as you want. You can, if you have a series of tasks that you do for every trip, it's really easy to set up an extension that you can create those ahead of time so they're added to your trip automatically based around the trip start or trip end dates. So especially for Disney agencies, I know there's a lot of things like fast passes and dinner reservations and things that have specific dates. So you can set those tasks up ahead of time in what we call an extension, so they get added automatically. And the last thing here on our timeline, on our trip, is the timeline. So you can see I didn't do anything special to add anything to this, but just every time I changed anything or added anything to this trip, an entry went into this timeline. So it makes it really easy to scan through and see what's been going on. It's all jumbled up kind of in one day because we did a lot of stuff all at once, but you'd see this get split out over multiple days. You can filter down to different types of changes and look for different things that changed on it. It's a really good research tool to see what happened on a trip. So when we were on our trips list here, we went into a regular trip. We have the concept of a group trip in TESS, and group trips mean different things to different people. A lot of people think of a group as a big official with a contract. You probably have room commitments and blocks of reservations and an inventory that you're managing, and that certainly can be a group trip. But a group trip could also just be two families going together to the same place that you want to keep track of in one. So here I started a quick group trip. I won't add much to it. You can see you do need a group number, but that can be anything that you want it to be. It can be just a date that you add in, or it could be Jones with anything that you want. So you can make up, if you got an official group number from the supplier, put it in. If you didn't, just make one up. So here they might be going to Disney. We build out the basic part of the reservation here, but then we would go in and add that reservation. So family number 1 would be a reservation, and this probably looks familiar. This is just a trip. So a group trip is really just a grouping of trips all together, as official or unofficial as you want it to be. Okay, that's our group trips. Let's go through a couple of other things real quick. Going into our reports here, there's 3 really important reports for agents or for owners, really. First is our projected income report, which is empty because our only bookings are in 2019. So let me move out to 2019. The projected income report is showing the expected commission payments based on travel date, because most travel, not all travel, and there's some settings that are specific from agency to agency, but generally speaking, a lot of travel pays after travel dates, or at least after the travel start date. So the projected income report is showing you those commissions based on the travel date. So you can kind of roughly look out and see what your income is going to look like in the future based on sales that you made in the past. The commission earned report is very similar to it, except it's based on when you made the sale. So regardless of when they're going to travel, regardless of when you're going to get that commission payment, when did you make the sale? When did you earn the money? And the past due report is going to tell you everything that TESS thinks you should have been paid for, but you haven't had a commission reconciled to the booking yet. We don't have anything here, of course, but once the travel dates have passed, if a commission check hasn't been reconciled to it, it'll show up here. So that just lets you know that you may probably need to follow up with your supplier, maybe with your agency owner, depending on how things are set up in your agency, but you probably need to call the supplier and say, hey, I haven't gotten a commission check for this yet. What's going on? We have charts that are just kind of interesting views into where you're sending people. And then custom reports are part of the advanced package, but if you're a data person, any piece of information in the system, we can put into a custom report for you. It can be detail level or summary level, whatever you want to see. We do have to set it up for you, but then you can run it yourself anytime after that. Our help desk here, easy way to submit a ticket. It could be a problem or a request. You can attach files. You can also just email support@travelysolutions.com, whichever you prefer. Going back up to the top here, I mentioned the inbox. That's where you'll get notifications usually about payments. On the calendar, you can see a couple of things. You can see when you have people traveling, and you can see when you have tasks to do. So here on the 23rd, I can see I have one trip and one task, and I can click into that to see what those are. Calendar can be really helpful to let you know, maybe if you're sending a lot of people to Disney, like in this example, and there's a hurricane coming toward Orlando, you can go look at that day, see who you have traveling right then, so that you can start looking at flight options and things for your travelers. And some people just like to work from the calendar view versus a task list or a trip list. Tasks are just a different way to see your tasks. You can complete them from here. You can click in to go to the trip. You can change them from here. Then finally, going back to our dashboard, we have a couple of trips here now. Once that finishes loading, we have some tasks to do. I guess I didn't save my group trip, but you see the group trip there as well. We can see our month-to-date and year-to-date sales. If we had sales for June of last year, we'd see that in blue compared to the yellow for this year. And then once our commissions start coming in, we'll see those populate here as well. And just as a reminder, documentation link down here at the bottom. I've referenced several of these sessions. The trip extensions one is the one that I was talking about a lot. That will show you how to set up that automation. So that one is usually the second Tuesday of the month. Basics, trips, clients. Those are the things that we covered tonight. So come out, watch those short videos, look at those step-by-step instructions.